I can't believe it is already the beginning of March, and with it a month and a half out, the tax man is here, and it is time to pay those taxes, maybe get a refund. But in the state of Colorado, if you are a taxpayer, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, TABOR, are issuing their refunds this year and they're going to be flat, $800 for a single filer or $1,600 for a joint filer. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little confused about this. I couldn't find last year's tax pay, their TABOR refunds, and I'm not sure exactly how all of that works. Some of it would appear on your income tax return. But that being said, if you are a taxpayer in the state of Colorado and you file your taxes, then at that point you will get your TABOR refund of $800 for an individual and $1,600 for a couple. That was a big to do this year when they were talking about property taxes. We are all paying property taxes right now in the state of Colorado. So first half is due in February, second half is due in May, or the entire amount is due in April, which for one of my properties does not have a mortgage, which if you have a mortgage, it is more than likely escrowed. Your property taxes are more than likely escrowed, but you will still potentially get a bill that very much looks like your property taxes are due. I've had a couple of clients reach out and ask, hey, aren't my taxes escrowed? Do I need to pay this? And yes, they are escrowed. They will get taken care of. But it's definitely worth checking and just verifying with your lender and or servicer. But there was instead of a standard deduction, I think it was $20,000 or $16,000. It jumped up to $50,000, and then the assessment rate went from like 6.77 or 6.78 to 6.7. So it did save people money on their property taxes. But these counties, which were relying upon property tax revenue, were potentially going to have shortfalls. And one of the areas that they were looking at kind of taking from was TABOR and all of the overages of taxes collected. And it's interesting. Recently, I had a comment on my page about how TABOR's, a fraud. And I don't know all of the ins and outs, but essentially, what they're suggesting, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights is protecting the taxpayers from paying too much taxes and the government just being able to spend any overages unnecessarily and therefore having to refund the money. So that was definitely a pushback because of how much money people would save on their property taxes versus lose on their TABOR refunds. And there was some assurances from Governor Polis saying that, hey, we're not going to decrease these and we're going to make them flat. But I think ultimately they did dip into those, and that's why they're flat and not adjusted based off of your income taxes. So it is a thing in Colorado that we have, and I don't know which side of the aisle is right or where exactly it all goes to. All I know is if you're a single filer, you're going to get $800 this year. Joint filer, you're going to get $1,600. Which, speaking about kind of Denver, the overarching state of Colorado, Denver has migrants that are there, and the mayor of Denver was suggesting that, let's see here, what is his name? Denver Mayor Mike Johnston suggested that places like Fort Collins would be helping out Denver in regards to this. And it kind of struck a nerve and scared some Fort Collins residents. And so Fort Collins residents reached out to city council, which they suggested that, hey, we have not said anything directly to Denver or anything along those lines. And there were some interesting numbers about Fort Collins. Currently, the city estimates that Fort Collins has an immigrant community of more than 11,000 people, which is pretty decent size. Honestly, we have 180,000 people in the city and 11,000 of them are part of the immigrant community, 4,500 which are not U.S. citizens. And there are funds in the city of Fort Collins, about $250,000 a year, which are allocated to help these individuals, Yes, returns are weird nowadays. Thanks, Rob. I agree. I don't even know on my Tabor if it was on my return or a check. I know I didn't get a check last year. So, but there is a fund in City of Fort Collins that helps go towards naturalizing these citizens and getting them through that process. But it can be scary. I know. As far as I don't watch a ton of news. I try to get some information for sure, but seeing some of the kind of crazy videos out there and some of the funds that are being given away to individuals who are in this community, and kind of the stress that it can put on both emotionally and financially these cities. I'm glad that Fort Collins isn't currently seemingly dealing with it on a large scale, and I hope we don't have to. As for what's the right humanitarian way and things to do, I don't know, but I know that selfishly, I'm glad that Fort Collins is not having to deal with it a lot, and it's not an issue at this time. But I could see how the statement made from the mayor of Denver could scare people in Fort Collins, saying, "Hey, wait, we don't want to have busloads of people coming here." But City Council is suggesting that no, they are not in those types of communications. I think it was probably just something to where maybe the mayor was suggesting areas like Fort Collins that maybe has infrastructure and amenities in place that could help, maybe would help. So that's definitely something that we can keep our eye on. But as of this moment, there's nothing that I can see here in Fort Collins that suggests we have any type of issue that is at least a big enough issue to draw attention to. Poudre School District is suggesting to change some of their graduation programs and requirements to adjust to the changing need of today's worker, and also help our graduation rates. It was interesting in this article. It suggested where Poudre School District actually has a lower graduation rate than like Weld County RE4 and Thompson Valley, kind of like one of the 6th or 7th school districts in the state of Colorado. But our SAT, ACT scores are second highest, next to Cherry Creek in the state of Colorado, which is definitely, an interesting kind of conversation of, okay, so why is it that we don't have as high of graduation rates, but we have some of the best ACT scores? Does it mean that our kind of elite students are just scoring very well, but the majority of students aren't getting what is needed to help them graduate? And so they want to have conversations about how can we make our graduation rates meet and rise to that ACT, SAT score level in the state of Colorado. So we're the second best school district in the state of Colorado, essentially, is kind of the drive, it seems. And also changing kind of themes of as far as like financial literacy and how can we stay on top of what is needed in today's changing times? Because I can say when I went through high school, the conversation, the joke was always that you're not always going to have a calculator in your pocket. And then, here comes the iPhone, and you're always going to have a resource. And the ability to critically think versus being able to just look up a piece of information is definitely different from when I was going through high school. The changes would not impact today's juniors or seniors, but it would change as of 2026. And there are ways to get involved and stay involved. I was kind of feeling a little overwhelmed the other day. I was like, man, okay, I'm staying on top of the city council, planning development, and then my kids are going through the Poudre School District, which is absolutely important. So I want to see what they're talking about, the Board of Education, what they vote on, what they're agreeing on. Individuals were just voted into place, which obviously they have their desires, their backgrounds. So there's all these things that are just so important to pay attention to. And man, do we get bogged down on our phones, on Instagram, and if we can put those away, how much work we can get done when we focus. But it's still a lot. I'm just like, all right, working a full-time job, being a dad, then paying attention to city council, planning and zoning, running my business, and then potentially now staying involved in the Poudre School District and what's going on there, and making sure that it aligns with what I'm wanting and what I'm hoping for. Not that I have a huge say in ultimately what they're going to vote on, but that being said, being in tune and making sure that, hey, like, are we making sure that we're preparing our kids for this new curriculum moving forward if we agree with it? And if we don't, there's always other options. There's the private schools, charter schools that we can kind of choose, because charter schools, you absolutely have to apply to get in, and it is not easy, as well as then private schools, of course, you could be anywhere between $10,000 to $15,000. We did a video on the cost of living in Fort Collins, and it was, not cheap to send your kid to a private school on an annual basis. So currently, the plans for my family is to send them through the Poudre School District, which is what I graduated from. But there are some changes that are potentially taking place, and would like to stay on top of that. So you can too, and just pay attention if your kid is at that age or going to be that age, that high school graduation requirements may be changing in the future. Let's see here. Livermore wants to have Livermore County pay for a character plan. And essentially what we're going to get down to here in a little bit, the city plan, which is a 20-year planning document, which is then comprised of all of these kind of master plans and then operational plans. And wow, it is a lot. But Livermore, which is growing and expected to be kind of a hub of transportation when the Glade Reservoir comes into play, many years down the road. But with the development of the Forks, there's currently a restaurant, and kind of that area, that Red Feathers area, Livermore, is definitely going to be a pretty decent economic highway with the Glade Reservoir that's coming. And there could be a 66-mile stretch between Ted's Place and Wyoming, broken up with the Forks, which then could spur economic development. And so they want to build a character plan, which is kind of like a zoning type development plan for the area, so that they can intentionally build over the coming years for growth, short-term rentals, commercial, maybe hotel, who knows, but that area could see a spur of economic activity in the near future. Rob, I don't know if you're still watching this. I wonder if you're still on, but there's an article that's talking about how Kroger is merging with Albertsons, but the Federal Trade Commission's potentially blocking that. Kroger is King Soopers, Albertsons is Albertsons. And when Rob moved here from out of state, he suggested that there's two types of people in Fort Collins. There's Safeway people and King Soopers people. Now, Albertsons is kind of a side conversation, and I thought that was super interesting. I just have found myself over my lifetime going to King Soopers. I will stop by Safeway and get my things. And if you lived in Golden Meadows in Fort Collins, I don't doubt you'd go to Safeway. It's just right there. But I thought it was pretty hilarious. And so we could see something, and we only have one Albertsons. We used to have two, but we only have one Albertsons in Fort Collins. So, and those aren't, and the competing kind of grocers, produce are going to be Costco, Walmart, King Soopers, Safeway, and Albertsons. So I don't think necessarily it would hinder competition in Fort Collins too much, but I could see maybe, it's a $25 billion acquisition. So I could see it being a big thing in places where maybe you have your two grocers that are King Soopers and Safeway. And if you lose one of those, and all of a sudden, the price appreciation, the inflation, I should say, of the groceries, which has been about 20 to 24% since 2020, could even get, more difficult. And with the ability to price things so real time these days, the sophistication of these companies could very well price gouge some people. So I could see it being an issue. I don't necessarily see it being too big of an issue in Fort Collins, but it could be. All righty. So getting into city council. So this is kind of what the crux of living in Fort Collins and why we kind of started this. I'm going to share a screen, as I was talking about a little bit earlier. But I wanted to look at this. So City of Fort Collins, they've obviously, 7 city council members, including the mayor. And they are in charge of essentially, passing ordinances. We vote them in and pass these different plans and shape our future for the 2 years that they're kind of in that position, 2 to 4 years that they're in that position. and really can have long-term impacts. So, but overall, they can only make so many changes because we do have this huge city plan, which is a 20-year vision plan. Then we have these master plans. So we have our climate future, transportation master plans, our bike master plan, and then we have different build outs. So East Mulberry, Lincoln Quarter, Midtown plan. And these are kind of guiding plans that are then helping shape. So for an example, this year we had the rental registration come into play. And one of the guiding plans for that would have been our housing plan that wanted people to have safe, clean, and secure housing. And one of the things that they thought that what they were originally going to have rental licensing, but now it's just a rental registration, just making sure that, hey, they know the rentals that are in there. They do have to have a one-time, I believe, inspection of the property, making sure that, hey, they've got the smoke detectors and are to code and being used as they are permitted. So a commercial property isn't being used as a residential property and vice versa. And when those plans come through, as long as they align with our housing plan, or maybe that is the guiding principle of why they're putting that in, saying, hey, people need safe, secure housing. What's one way we can do that? Rental registration. It aligns with their plan. We vote on it, pass it. It comes into play. I was just thinking about it this the other day. I haven't personally seen our rental registrations come through yet, but that's going to be a decent bill because I think it's like $35 or $50 per unit. And it's a one-time, I think you have to do it every 5 years or so. But anyways, they go through these ordinances and make sure that they align with our master plans. So currently we're voting in some council priorities and then a strategic plan. And so right now we're kind of at this orange level right now. We just voted on last week 11 of the 12 council priorities to pass through. And our city strategic plan was going through a work session so that they can then have a 3 to 5 year plan ahead of them. And then from there, you have kind of like smaller, more focused plans, housing strategic, utilities, park. Then our biennial budget, believe that's every 2 years is my understanding. And then operational plans. So I just thought that was a super interesting way to look at things as far as how the city goes about putting together plans. And when you have a staff of over 2,000 people at the city, you can implement these plans with success and have the resources that are needed. And so a lot of people plan and never do. City of Fort Collins, from what I could see over the last few years as I've watched city council, when they plan and then vote, and then City of Fort Collins staff puts it into action, and it's pretty impressive to watch, really. Speaking of which, I wanted to go through our 12 city priorities, council priorities, and one of which did not get passed. Alrighty, so operationalize city resources to build and preserve affordable housing. Probably one of the biggest things in Fort Collins right now that people are talking about is affordable housing and how do we address that situation. Improve human and social health for vulnerable populations. This, again, kind of the immigrants that we were talking about, the 11,000 people, the different backgrounds and races, and making sure that they are having the resources that they need within schools, senior citizens, making sure that there's not a population that might not necessarily have as loud of a voice as others that are still protected. Advance a 15-minute city by igniting neighborhood centers. So a big driver for Fort Collins is they want these 15-minute communities, which I think is going to be very difficult, but to be able to ride or bike anywhere, to be able to have fun, work, and grocery shop all within 15 minutes. And I can tell you, I could probably ride my bike and get potentially groceries at Safeway, which I'm not going to, but maybe to King Soopers. Could definitely get some restaurants in, and I did work downtown, so that wouldn't necessarily work for me, but I probably could work more from home. And a big driver of this is to obviously minimize carbon emissions through our gas vehicles, focus on our active modes of transportation, our bikes, e-scooters, all that kind of stuff. But I feel like that one's going to be a pretty tough one to continue to push and hammer, because we just don't have a ton of these neighborhood centers where, but maybe there's more to come, and that will help. That will ultimately be addressed through some of these land use codes. Phase 1 is going to be more residential. Phase 2, if we ever get to it, will be more commercial, which could then maybe help some of these neighborhood centers be built and grow. The one that did not pass was improve animal welfare through public education and policy. Fails 4-3. I'm not going to lie, I kind of got distracted when I was watching this. Not that it's not important, but they were talking about animal shelters, birds, and cats. And I mean, yes, it is an important thing. And I want to make sure that, especially because people love their dogs here in Fort Collins and Colorado, and their cats, all that good stuff. But man, in my opinion, there are so many more things that are more important than, just affordability of housing could, part 2 would take that. So many different things. So I don't care that didn't pass 4-3. But hopefully people, if they're pet owners, are good pet owners, they took good care of their animals. And I'm sure there's a lot more involved with that. Maybe elderly people who can't take care of their pets anymore, or college kids who buy a dog and then their freshman, sophomore year get rid of it. All that kind of stuff. I get it. It's important. I just feel like there are more important things as a city council to be focusing on. So I'm not a huge. It's a nothing burger to me that it fell 4-3. Pursue an integrated, intentional approach to economic health. Yes, I think that the foundation of a city is in its economy and its business, to be able to generate revenue, tax base for the city sales tax, allow for people to have higher paying jobs. I think it is extremely important to focus on our economic health as a community, and making sure that both individuals are economically healthy and the city is economically healthy. Create pathways for zero waste infrastructure and policies. Of course, we have a goal of carbon neutral footprint over the next 10, 20 years, and don't disagree with that. I know it's an uphill battle, but City of Fort Collins continues to fight that. Reduce climate pollution and air pollution through electrification. The push towards electrification, green EVs, having charging stations, definitely a big driver. And Fort Collins has always kind of been on the forefront as far as that goes. I believe, there's some studies out there that we've got a strong amount of charging stations per capita comparatively to the rest of the United States. So a focus continually on the electrification. And that's also, they were also talking about how we have these, gas power plants, and we need to make sure that first and foremost that we have reliable energy. That will always be number one, that during a snowstorm, during any type of storm or crunch on the grid, that we are able to provide utilities and power to individuals. And once we have the ability to have a reliable source of clean energy, there's the dark, cloudy, dark, calm. They call them the dark, calm days, where it's dark, so there's no solar, and it's calm, so no wind power, and to be able to make sure that our grid doesn't get pressed. And so currently we're building a clean, or they're in the plans to build a clean gas-powered plant. And hopefully what that will do will be allow us to, over the next 10, 15, 20 years, or whatever that might be, get us to a more reliable source, better battery packs. So instead of a 4 to 8 hour life, they've got 150 hour life. And so when there's those dark calms, we have a more reliable source of energy. So I definitely think Fort Collins is on the right path to be thinking about those things. Always thinking forward, in my opinion. And I think City of Fort Collins, City Council are great as far as that goes. Protect community water systems in an integrated way to ensure resilient water resources and healthy watersheds, specifically the Poudre River. And I know I talked earlier in this episode about the Glade Reservoir that is going to be built off 287. And that's definitely, there's the Save the Poudre folks, and Kelly Olson is definitely huge as far as the reclamation of the Poudre River. When we take those resources out of the Poudre River, and how do we protect the natural life, the landscape, the ecosystem, all of that kind of stuff. So it's a focus of Fort Collins. It was interesting. I was listening to the Planning and Zoning Board, and they were talking about how Dry Creek used to be a main tributary into the Poudre River, but no more. And now it's just kind of a trickle, but it was going through an area over off of Hickory and North Mason where more than likely the homeless shelter will be built. But they were talking about how, there's a watershed there and we have to maintain it, but it used to be a main tributary and it is no longer that. So definitely needing to protect the resources. The Poudre River is vital as far as economic. So many different things. It cuts through Fort Collins on the north side, all the way up through Timnath and Windsor to Greeley. So they want to make sure that those resources are protected and maintained. Again, advance a 15-minute city by accelerating our shift to active modes. So this push of there is a plan zero, so 0 deaths or major accidents by bike by, I think it's 2032 or 2030. And the way that we're going to do that is continue to build paved trails, protected bike systems, allow for electric scooters, electric bikes, but get cars and then also public transportation, buses, Ubers, but get people out of their cars and into alternative modes of transportation. Excited to see that. I think Fort Collins, I know that people watch these videos and comment, all the time how very, very possible it is for Fort Collins to be even a 0-car family, let alone a 1-car family. We are a 3-car family. So definitely going against that. We have a van that our kids use with our nanny. Janae, my wife, she works in Northern Colorado Rehab Hospital in Johnstown. I work downtown Fort Collins. So we are kind of going all over the place and still need to maintain our kids. But so we are kind of the culprits, I would say, of the active modes plan. If they saw us, they want us to educate us and tell us how we could do it. And I don't think it's impossible. I think it's very possible, but maybe difficult. So I'm definitely one of those that City of Fort Collins Council is looking at and saying, hey, how do we get you out of your car, ride your bike more? And I think that'd be cool. I think it's possible. And I think people do need education and see maybe how they just need to shift a few of their things. And it can save a lot of money, carbon emissions, all that good stuff. So I will not commit to doing anything anytime soon, but I will commit to being open. So develop a Hughes site master plan. That is huge. 160 acres on the west side of Fort Collins. Voted on to remain open land, but what that means, who knows? Walking paths, trails, natural areas, bike parks, you name it. There's lots of different options, but it is potentially a huge opportunity for the City of Fort Collins to make it a super cool area and way for Fort Collins to be very unique, continue to be unique moving forward. Make government more accessible, approachable, and fun. That's great. I think city council members are very open, generally speaking, especially if you get engaged as a citizen. Very easy to talk to, get in touch with. And then modernize and update the city charter. This was interesting. I talked with Mayor Jenny Arndt, about how she doesn't want to have this legacy of, I did this. She is okay if it's a boring legacy. And part of that is cleaning up the city charter. There's a lot of duplicate language. She wants to remove the need for there to be a document that requires 10, 15, 20 signatures before it gets onto her desk or get passed or approved. And there's ways of doing that by way of the city charter. And it's definitely not a sexy legacy, but it could be transformative for future city council groups to be able to govern in an effective and economical way. So I thought that was pretty cool. All right, which those are all 11 were voted on. I believe there was a few that didn't get all 7 votes, but 11 of the 12 all got voted through. So those are your city council priorities for the next 2 years, which then we jump into the city strategic plan for the next couple of years. And I want to share my screen with you guys on this. And so we can go through this. High-performing government. Provide an exceptional customer experience to community, increase cities' effectiveness by simplifying process. Build trust with increasing diversity community through meaningful engagement. Deliver exceptional employee experience by attracting, developing, retaining diverse talent. And incorporate management strategy for all new existing city assets to address deferred maintenance and accessibility. All right. I think high-performing government, we need to be able to take care of those things. And these are the city council priorities that are going to kind of direct that. Neighborhood and community vitality. There's 4 objectives. I'm not going to read through each of these. Culture and recreation. These are definitely something that's hugely important to Fort Collins, is arts and music. We are a very vibrant community, and we got to make sure that Fort Collins is staying that way. And then also our parks and recreation facility. We just passed a 0.5-cent city sales tax to make sure that our parks and recreation their assets are being maintained, updated, and still staying fun. Economic health, again, 2 objectives, but we got to make sure that first and foremost, in my opinion, our economy is definitely on track to do well. Environmental health, again, we've got multiple things: climate waste, climate zero waste. Cache La Poudre is on there, and natural areas. We have 57,000 acres of natural areas in northern Colorado. I think it's like Fort Collins, or it's a significant amount of land. Transportation and mobility, 3 of those. So again, a focus on active modes, 15-minute cities, better public transportation. Safe communities. I think one of the things that Fort Collins is known for is being a safe community. And I was talking with a client, and he was asking about a specific neighborhood. I was like, well, I feel like it's a pretty safe area. And he laughed at me and he said, Patrick, all of Fort Collins is safe. So that's kind of a non-factor. I will say, though, I've had a rough year. I've had a rough year so far as like theft and break-ins. So I don't know if I talked about it here, but I did at DIA. It is a thing. If you have an F-150 specifically, which was what we parked it down there, in the covered parking garage, we were gone for 10 days during Christmas. And when I got back, my truck was not there. Come to find out, I think they were all the way up to like 12 to 13 vehicles a day being stolen, got down all the way to 3. I think they're like between 6 to 8 vehicles a day get stolen from DIA parking. Now, there's specific cars, which I believe are Ford F-150 trucks. And I think the reasoning for that is that they have the highest resale value, and so they're worth getting done. But fortunately, DIA police were able to identify my vehicle. It was tagged, moved it off site. I did have to drop, I think it was $1,600 to fix my door handle and lock, but at least my truck was not stolen. That was in January. Over this weekend, I was at the gym, and I've never had this happen to me. And I'm sure I aged more so than I already have quite a few years, but I was at the gym, and I got there at 10. I get 2 hours of childcare. I was solo dadding it this weekend. And by noon, I picked up my kids, went to go get donuts, and I looked at my wallet, and there was I was missing 3 credit cards. And I was like, what the heck? I was like, maybe I dropped them in the van or whatever. And so I checked the van, nothing there. I was like, well, maybe they fell out, and I got to go check the gym. So I went and checked the gym, nothing in the lost and found. And by this time, I started getting pinged left and right of fraud activity. Here's a charge, there's a charge. I mean, within 2 hours, the first charge was at 11 a.m. And by the time I was able to stop all the charges, they had rung up $10,000 worth of charges. So I will tell you what I did. I immediately stopped. There was a debit card in there, which I recommend don't bring in debit cards because they don't have the protection that credit cards have. But I did, and I do for whatever reason. But I was able to turn that debit card off, call American Express, turn that credit card off real quick. And then it took me forever to get in touch with Wells Fargo. So that was definitely a bummer and an annoyance. But it was ultimately about $10,000. And they suggest that I'm going to have all of those funds returned to me. But that doesn't mean that, somebody just got away with $10,000 worth of items from Best Buy, Macy's, and the Dollar Tree. So hopefully, all this does is bring awareness. And I don't know what the solution is, because there have been cars that have got broken into. People have stories of day lockers being broken into. I mean, it's kind of like you don't want to bring anything of value to the gym. I don't know if they're just targeted. Sometimes I would say, definitely ignorant, because I've been going to the gym since I was 18. I've never had this happen to me. So, I've got 17 years of gym going experience with this never happening. And it sucked. I definitely felt violated. I felt annoyed, mad, and angry. And so I filed a police report. I did feel like some of my personal information was at risk. So I am on LifeLock with Norton. So I put some locks on there. I put my credit scores. I froze all of those. So I went through all these processes. It took about 4 hours. Felt like a terrible dad, honestly, at the time, because I was solo dad in it. So I just said, hey, kids, you guys got to go watch the movies. I got to figure this out. Dad is not in a good mood right now. And so I don't have a great explanation. I can tell you what I did yesterday, Sunday, when we went to the gym. I just put my clothes in the locker in the gym, and then used the day lock for my keys and wallet. So, but it definitely it's kind of tainted me in the sense of like, man, Janae, we went out on a date night on Saturday night after this, and Janae was like asking me about it. And I said, I think the worst part is right now I'm like looking at people like, did you fucking steal my shit? Did you steal my shit? Did you steal my shit? And I like this bad mentality of, I'm sure it was a couple, maybe one, maybe two bad apples, bad characters that hopefully will get caught. I mean, it's $10,000. So, but all that to be said, Fort Collins has always been a very safe place to me. So, having those as far as priorities needs to be, at the forefront, because I think it allows people to feel safe with their kids, their families, all that kind of stuff. And it only takes so many of these instances before there's a bad reputation of a gym or an area. And so, I reported it to the Fort Collins Police Department. They're going to do some investigative work. I reported it to Miramont South, and hopefully they make some, at least let some of their, patrons know, like, hey, make sure you're locking up your stuff, or making sure no one's looking at you. Because I have no idea how they got into my locker. It is very possible that the credit cards fell out of my pocket, my wallet, those 3 specific ones. So, benefit of the doubt, possibly they fell out and somebody picked them up, but more than likely it sounds like they were in my locker when they got stolen. So definitely got to keep Fort Collins safe, and the ability to go enjoy a thing like Great Plates. Great Plates are in Fort Collins between now and March 14th. There's a little bit of a change this year. They usually have it's like $20 and you get, a cool meal. And, but then the idea is to donate towards, Great Plates. And essentially they allocate all these funds. It's all these different restaurants are in play with it. It's between now and March 14th, and there's different options. I think there's a $25, $35, and a $45 option, all with the intention to be very affordable, so that you can then take a portion of whatever the extra would have been and apply it towards, this great cause, which is Great Plates in Fort Collins. So that's going on between now and March 14th. Spring break is coming up next week, maybe next week or the week after, I think. So there's lots of Hoedown Hill closes March 17th. Somebody was asking me about that. And so if you haven't been, which we have not, but we're considering going through spring break, closes March 17th. I can only imagine, with how nice of weather we've had over the last few weeks, how expensive it would be to keep that snow going. But Martin Lind, the developer of Rain Dance, has spared no expense, and Rain Dance is definitely a transformative community. But I will also say there is a community to the west, Buffalo Bison Ridge, that I would hate to be there at night and have a back patio that used to be able to look off into the plains of the east. And now you're seeing a disco light at night, which is Hoedown Hill, for probably 5 to 6 months out of the year. But if you haven't been, it's super awesome, at least from everything I could see. But that closes March 17th. that's kind of the two big things that are happening. Spring break coming up. Don't know what we got going on. What are you guys doing for spring break? What do you do with kids for a week? And we want to be intentional about it. Whether it's going to take some day trips. We were originally going to go do some ski lessons. We still might. There's an indoor place in Loveland. I thought maybe getting ski lessons there before going onto a hill would be a good idea. But we're excited about it. Our oldest is in kindergarten, so it's kind of our first official spring break. So ideas. There you go. Somebody's going to Austin for the eclipse. Yes, there's the eclipse happening. I didn't talk about it today, but the eclipse is happening. Let's see here. April 7th, is it? There is the April 8th. There is an eclipse happening. You can see the partial in Fort Collins from 11:30 to 1:30, but it looks like somebody is going to Austin for the total eclipse. I'm guessing that is where the kind of full eclipse that you can see that is. I remember in 2017 when it happened, it was just wild, that kind of the shadows on the streets and just this weird feeling, but definitely pretty cool. And I did have another friend who traveled to Montana, I think it was, or maybe it was like South Dakota, somewhere, the Badlands, to get a full view. But I mean, the traffic on I-25 was insanity through Wyoming. So I can only imagine if you're going to Austin, if there's going to be some decent traffic there. But definitely that is coming up. So April 8th is the total eclipse. And the last time it happened was in 2017. Well, I appreciate you guys all joining today. Hopefully this is some valuable information. If you guys have any questions, definitely feel free to comment or email, all that good stuff. But I appreciate you guys watching today, and have a good rest of your day.